or if you've had a stroke. Oh, if you've had a stroke, they'll help with the brain plasticity and reset the internal gyroscopes. Really incredible. So they just asked me to be on the board with them. So yeah, it's a not-for-profit, and they've got a lot of work to do. So I'm going to help them spread the good word.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, fantastic. My friend Dr. Mark Gordon does some similar stuff. He works with people with traumatic brain injuries. That's his specialty, in particular, soldiers, veterans.
Okay, that's awesome.
And he has a perspective of optimizing hormones as a way to address that, because when someone has a traumatic brain injury, what happens is the pituitary gland is damaged. It usually shuts off testosterone and growth hormone production completely.
Yeah, I've heard that.
No way you're going to feel good when both are shut off. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And what he does is he restores it, sometimes using things such as Clomid and HCG. These are drugs, but they ramp up your own production of testosterone rather than replace it. Sometimes that's not enough, and then TRT is useful, even for younger guys, because once your pituitary gland is really damaged, your testosterone production is not coming back. Growth hormone production is not coming back. So it's
they prevent, they're anti-estrogens, so they lower the body's estrogen. Thereby the body balances it out by creating more testosterone.
Well, Clomid, are you talking about Clomid, or are you talking about?
Yeah, Clomid and HCG.
Okay, Clomid is a interesting compound. It's a SERM. It's a selective estrogen receptor modulator. Now, what it does is it lowers estrogen levels in the brain, which tricks your body into producing more luteinizing hormone to increase more testosterone. Now, it's possible that the reason why it's trying to ramp up testosterone is so that some of it converts back to estrogen, but I don't know. I brought that up to Dr. Gordon. He didn't disagree, but he doesn't know. But what's going on with Clomid, though, is that it doesn't actually lower estrogen levels systemically. I mean, in other words, if you have high estradiol levels or high estrone, nobody takes Clomid to lower that. If anything, those numbers are going to go up from the increase in testosterone and the subsequent conversion of testosterone to estrogen. So Clomid's not an anti-estrogenic compound, is where I'm going. It's not like a Arimidex or letrozole. These are pretty potent aromatase inhibitors. And Clomid works through a different way. It's not an aromatase inhibitor. It just tricks you into thinking that it needs to produce more testosterone. It works for sure. I've used it. It works really well.
You're the right guy to ask these questions to.
Yeah.
How incredible are the things that humans can make?
Oh, it's amazing. There's no better time to be alive right now because there's so many interesting compounds. There's so much interesting research. I mean, peptides is something I'm really big into now. I've been experimenting with a variety of peptides, and they're amazing. I mean, they're incredible.
Yeah, I had a great experience with peptides as well. That helped heal a chronic elbow tendonitis that I had from all the years in the military, climbing ropes with packs on and cocking machine guns over and over again. And I'd go to the Navy and do PT in the morning. Then after work, I'd go lift weights, and then after that, I'd go do jiu-jitsu. And so 30 minutes into my class, I'm like T-Rex, and I can't even move my arms. And that went on for like a year and a half, and I did everything from, massage and acupuncture and whatever the military physiotherapists would do. They wouldn't recommend PRP, so I didn't get to do that. And then a guy I know was like, dude, you need to get on some growth hormone releasing peptide. And so I looked into it, did that, and I did about 2 months of that, and it went away, and it's never come back as bad as the first time.
Did you use CGC 1295 and
CJC 1295 and GHRP6?
Okay. Yeah, very interesting.
That was like 2000 and just 2008.
It's a while ago. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because peptides have been around for a while, but only now are they starting to reach mass appeal. People are becoming more aware of them, and people are trying them more. I used a combination of growth hormone releasing peptides just recently. I finished 3 months of it, and it was CGC 1295 and ipamorelin, and that stuff worked really well. Workout was great, sleep was good, and the thing I noticed the most is that it obliterated stomach fat. My stomach has never been
really.
It is right now.
The CJC is to boost the longevity of the ipamorelin, isn't it?
I believe that
only has a half-life of about 6 to 7 hours.
Right. I mean, the gold standard is tesamorelin. That's what I'm going to use next time. That's the most potent hormone.
You just treat yourself like a human guinea pig
Oh,
over there.
yeah, man. This is what I do. So I'm 46 now, so I'm like, screw it. What do I have to lose at this point?
So how's that second head growing out of your back going?
If I ever wanted to use stuff, now's the time to do it. I mean, I've gotten this far being completely natural, and I don't look at peptides as the same category as anabolics, but they are performance enhancers. So the peptides don't have negative consequences, especially when used properly. And even SARMs are really interesting, but peptides, in my opinion, have a better safety protocol than SARMs do.
Especially the ipamorelin.
What's that?
Especially the ipamorelin.
Oh, yeah. The peptides have been around for a long time. People have used it for a long time. So that stuff definitely works. There's actually a growth hormone peptide which isolates a certain compound. It's called, what is the name of it? It has a strange name, Frag something 187. Now this stuff only does one thing. It gets rid of stubborn body fat wherever it is on your body. That's all it does. It doesn't improve workout recovery. It's not going to improve strength. It's not going to improve tendon health. But a lot of bodybuilders are using it now pre-contest, maybe about 30 days out or even a little bit. It shreds up your abs. Now I'm using that now, actually. So we'll see I'll post a little picture in a couple of weeks. We'll see how this thing works. But
you got to do the process, mate. You got to do one every week to see how much better. Look, there's a 1-pack, there's a 2-pack.
Well, I've already got a lot going on here, so I'm feeling good. So now we'll see what happens with this. But what was I going to say about it?
Yeah, I think that the good thing about the peptides is a lot of the stigma around that sort of stuff is burning away, and people are starting to understand that it's not an old school steroid like from the days of Franco Colombo, where you're just going to blow up and it's going to kill your liver and all that. This stuff is actually designed to do the best possible thing for your body. And if used wisely, it's only going to be beneficial.
Oh, then there's no reason to take growth hormone replacement therapy anymore. For a majority of people that want to increase their growth hormone, all the peptides ramp it up several 100%, and that's your own production. So there's no subsequent shutdown. The thing that Dr. Mark Gordon told me is that you don't want to be on the growth hormone releasing peptides for too long without taking a break, because what happens is your body can't keep up with the growth hormone production. So it could actually shut down that way. So your body just burns out trying to keep up with the production.
Yeah,
so
you don't want that.
So 3 months on, 1 month off is reasonable. Some people do 6 months on and then they take 6 months off. But my attitude is that's a good amount of time to be on, but that's a long time to be off too.
Yeah. I know people back home that have been on it forever. They just don't stop taking it.
Yeah. I don't know that I can't recommend, and I'm certainly no expert on peptides, but someone like Dr. Mark Gordon is on these things, so I usually defer to him.
Absolutely.
And I have a friend here in Vegas, Dr. Julio Garcia. He's the guy I got peptides from originally, and he had a similar philosophy: do a couple months on, take a month off, let it wash out, then jump back on again.
Well, it's like anything really, isn't it? So a friend of mine, he does microdosing mushrooms, and he puts together all the adaptogenics, so the reishi, the lion's mane, the chaga, all of that, and then niacin is a vasodilator, and then he'll put 0.1 of a milligram of psilocybin. And so to get the psychoactive effects, you've got to have at least 0.5. So this 0.1 doesn't give you can operate at 100%. He says you have to do it 5 days on, 2 days off at a minimum, so your body doesn't get used to it and you get the most benefit.
The psilocybin feeling is amazing. I used that for about 2 weeks. I did that 5 weeks on, 2 days off. Psilocybin, and it was at a low dosage, is what you're talking about, because I didn't hallucinate or even have. It felt a little bit like a marijuana high, but I felt very focused, and colors look really vibrant. And like you said, you're fully functional. You can go driving, you can go do whatever you want to do. You're not debilitated in any way. I love it. I think psilocybin is going to be the next thing that becomes legal. Soon there'll be dispensaries that have THC, psilocybin, DMT, I believe, is another one that I think is going to horizon.
Well, Tim Ferriss is doing a lot of work in that area with the MAPS Institute. They just raised $30 million for clinical studies, and they're looking into not just psilocybin, but MDMA and ketamine therapy for PTSD, for depression, for all manner of mental health issues, and they're having incredible successes where people are going through this trial of the drug and then the intensive therapy at the same time.
Right.
And 5 years down the track, they still are not clinically described as depressed or have PTSD.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I'm on the bipolar spectrum. I've had depression as long as I can remember. So I would be very curious to try something such as DMT, ayahuasca. I've used psychedelics, but LSD when I was a young man, I did that many times. And
Not in the therapeutic
I don't think that helped the depression. That may have made it worse. That may have been the cause of it. Looking back now, I did that a bunch of times, and that stuff. It's an interesting experience. My take on LSD is this, though: for about an hour or two, when it kicks in, it's fun. It's amazing. You're like, wow, this is incredible. Everything looks incredible. But then it just lasts forever. It stays in your system for 12 hours. So you start after a while.
Man.
And you can't relax because you keep hallucinating and seeing all kinds of crazy shit. So and then the next day you have this somewhat of a hangover feeling. You just feel really out of it. And I used to get these flashbacks for years after I stopped taking it. And it's not like I took it every day for a month. I've only taken it maybe 6 or 7 individual times. But anytime it would rain for years afterward, I would get this flashback type effect. So that stuff is real, at least it was in my case. But the psilocybin is, at least at the dosage I tried, that was a totally different experience. Mushrooms I've never used in terms of hallucinogenic mushrooms. DMT, though, I've heard is amazing because it only lasts about 20 minutes.
Not even. So it'll... Like, I'm no expert. I've done it a couple of times. For me, it lasted maybe 5 minutes, and it affects different people differently. And I think it helps if you do it with someone that's experienced and can guide you through it as well. For me, I did it maybe 4 times, and I just loved the journey. Like you said, when you had psilocybin, the colors and the shapes of everything around me stood out, and it made me think this is actually how we're supposed to see. I feel like everything has been dampened so much in the human mind and body that we're not functioning at our full potential. And that initial steps into the DMT realm was like, this is exactly how we're supposed to see things. And then it's just powering through like a kaleidoscope of frescoes and shapes, and it's a really wild trip. But then other people have death experiences and life experiences and meet, there's this woman that apparently a lot of people meet. So I think it's the funny thing about DMT is the experiences are very, very much the same. Everyone sees kind of the same thing, which is not the same in any other what's the word I'm looking for? The psychoactive realm. No one has the same experience except for DMT. Right. So I think in your world with everything that you're doing, it'd be silly not to give it a go.
Oh, I'd love to try it. It's just a question of finding a source I trust.
I'll talk to you later.
let's talk off air. Let's start recording for a minute. Yeah, that I definitely want to try. I read a book on it. It sounds really interesting. That sounds like something that I would benefit a lot from as well. I think I would have some breakthroughs on that, or I would certainly give it a try a couple times to see if that happens. Yeah, so I think that it's interesting to see this shift, because I remember as a young man, I went to Holland for the first time, and I was about 21. I was on my way to Africa to visit my parents. So I was in Holland for about 24 hours, and I thought it was amazing that you could go to a quote-unquote coffee shop and get marijuana and have it right there in public. You could have the tea, you could eat the space cakes, as they call them. You could smoke a joint if you wanted to. I was like, wow, this is incredible. I wonder if America will ever become like this. And now we're starting to move in that direction where, I mean, Las Vegas, it's essentially legal. There's dispensaries every 50 feet.
Oh, same in LA.
Sorry, I thought I turned this off.
No worries. Yeah, I did the same thing in Holland as a young man. Went out there with 2 of my friends doing a Europe trip. And but I don't have a positive relationship with marijuana. And so I did it as a young man a lot. When I was going through a period where I'd been kicked out of home. I was into a lot of crime, trouble, dealing marijuana, all that sort of crap. Wow. And so I don't have this positive relationship with it. Even now that I'm older, and it's very widely used through basically every workspace from, I know celebrities that smoke it every single day, down to tech giants, to every man. but every time I hit it, all I want to do is go to bed. And my friend's like, no, you gotta have you gotta have this one and that one. And I'm like, yeah, all right, give me a go. Yeah, I still want to go to bed. I get paranoid and I start proofreading everything I want to say before I say it. And by the time I say it, the conversation's moved on and everyone thinks I'm a weirdo. And so I'll stick to drinking a couple of beers.
Yeah. It's funny how some things can become really difficult when you're on a marijuana high. You're going, yeah, I want to get the mail, but it's so far to walk outside. And go to the mail. You know? I don't know if I can make it there. I may get lost on the way there. You know?
What's going to happen?
You walk halfway out and you go, what am I doing out here? You walk back inside. Oh, yeah, I'm going to get the mail. Nah, it's okay. I'll get it later.
Man, I didn't even know what this conversation was going to be about. We just went straight into drugs.
This is total free flow. I don't even come on with any questions. I just want to have conversations. So I just feel the person out and let's see where we're going. I figure you and I have enough common interest. It would be easy. And thus far we're proving that. But let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk about you because you have a really interesting story. I want to get to where you're at right now, but I want to dial it back a little bit and get some of your backstory. So you grew up in Australia. Whereabouts in Australia?
Yeah, I was in Melbourne till I was 10, but my dad was a cop. I had 2 younger brothers and a younger sister, and he got posted to a place called Canberra. He got employed by a group called the Australian Bureau of Criminal Intelligence. So the family uppicked and moved 10 hours north. Canberra's the capital of Australia. It's really pretty. It's very safe. It's very clean. It's also really, really boring. And so as a young, adventurous kid, you just go and find your own fun. And so that led me down some pretty horrible paths. And like I said, kicked out of home at 17. I flunked high school. I wasn't interested in I had no guidance. As the oldest child, my parents were more focused on my younger siblings. And I was just kind of like, you just look after yourself. And so no one told me about the world. You know, I read a lot, constantly read. And so I knew about, I read the Encyclopedia Britannica. I watched all the David Attenborough series. And so I knew about that world and that was what interested me. But I was living in Canberra. There's not a lot of, with 6 people on a policeman's wage. So not a lot of funds. And so I'd go out and steal stuff to get it. And so I ended up getting kicked out of home. I was just working bars, dealing weed, and I got jumped by 20 guys just before I turned 21. And I just thought to myself, I can't maintain this. I'm going to be dead or in jail by the time I'm 23. And so I said, look, the only thing I could think to do was remove myself from this environment that I'd become a product of. And so I left my town. I drove 12 hours north, ended up in a city called Brisbane. And my friend Matt lived there, and he got me a job behind the bar that he was DJing at. And so that was a strip club. And so ended up working bar in a strip club, and then I was living with some American guys that were in the rap game, and so I was a bartender in a strip club, and I became a rapper. And yeah, the
story's getting a lot more interesting than I thought it was.
had a lot of fun. My friends were all really good-looking girls. I was making rap music. Ended up opening for Snoop Dogg in 1998. Yeah, but, thought I'd made it. This is it. This is my calling. I'm going to be a rapper. Not a lot of money in rapping in Australia in 1998, my friend. And so, as bands do, the band broke up, and I was back to working behind a bar. And I remember sitting there one day, just thinking, is this as good as it gets? I looked at my bar manager, and he was just this skinny dude smoking a cigarette, going home to his wife in the burbs. And I was like, I cannot do this. I need something greater. Instinctively that there is something better for you out there. And I think a lot of people know that, but they just get brought down by society or their own expectations or limitations or what their family and friends tell them they can and can't do. But sometimes you just got to cut all that fat away and just listen to that internal voice and believe that there really is something better for you. And so I risked it all. My 2 younger brothers were in artillery in the army, and I just thought, stuff it. I'm gonna just go join the army. And so I became an airborne soldier, and did that from November 2000 to 2005. Had some incredible experiences. sniper's course, unarmed combat, jungle warfare, airborne rappelling out of Black Hawk helicopters, like shit that I didn't even know I could physically do. And people in the real world will never have the opportunity to do. And so I relished all of that. I got to have my first overseas trip as a United Nations peacekeeper to a small island nation called East Timor. And the Indonesians had been killing these people for decades. Something like 250,000 of them had been killed through war, famine, or murder, straight up murder. They had these guys that would cross the border in black outfits. They called them the ninjas, and they're just going to the town and start killing people. And so a multinational force went in there. I spent 6 months in there as a translator and soldier, and just to see how the other side lived, coming from our first world countries where you have clean water, electricity, TVs, whatever you want, it's right there, healthy food if you want it, to a country where they didn't have anything. Their homes were built from thatches that they built themselves. They collected their drinking water from a tap in the main street. It was mind-blowing, and it gave me such an appreciation for the things that we have. I think something that should be adopted in the modern world is high school kids should have to go and work in a third world country for at least a month to go and experience what it's like. And I think that would create a much more grateful generation of people.
Oh, absolutely it would. I mean, I'm half Indian. My mother's from India, so I spent some time in India as a kid. I've been all over Africa as a young person. So I've been in these undeveloped or underdeveloped countries where a lot of people live on the fringe. They live on just barely getting by each day. And not only do they have a hard time getting by, but they also live with the fear that raiders could come through at any point and take everything you've got.
Yeah.
And they still manage to have a good attitude for the most part.
And that was the thing that blew me away the most, mate. They were so happy.
Yeah.
Because they had what was important to them. We were there protecting them, so they didn't have to worry about their safety, which was a game changer. They had their families, they had their health. They, every Sunday they'd get dressed up in their finery and go off to church, and they loved it. And so coming home from that just gave me a whole new appreciation. But I also got bored of running around the bush smelly and stinky and shitting in a hole and sleeping in a hole and fighting in a hole. And so I started looking for something else and came across these group of guys in the Navy called the clearance divers. I'm just really freaking jealous of. Are you drinking a beer right now?
No, I'm not. But I was laughing. That's what it looks like. This is barley, but it looks just like a beer. Well, hey, look, if I knew we were going to have this drug discussion, I would have brought my vape pen over here and just started going at it.
And so I found out about these guys called the clearance divers. They always kind of talked about in hushed tones, that sort of people, not special forces, but as close as you could get in the Australian Navy. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to give it a go. I'm going to see what happens. And I ended up passing the selection process. While I wasn't hugely strong, my father was, as I said, a cop, but he was also a swimming instructor. And so I grew up swimming from a very, very young age. And so I had a really great endurance fitness. I was built like a freaking paper straw, but I could go forever. I could do all the push-ups. I could carry a pack forever. I could run forever. And so that's what was required to pass that selection, that mental endurance. And so I passed that 10 days of pure hell, became a fully fledged badged Navy clearance diver. And that was it, man. I discovered my dream job, my dream life. I was living at Bondi Beach. I rode a big black Italian sports bike. I was traveling with my mates, shooting guns, blowing stuff up, jumping out of aircraft, diving, and it couldn't get any better. And then I turned up to work one morning and a fucking bull shark decided to eat me.
Yeah, let's talk about that. How did that happen? Let's hear about this shark story. What were the circumstances of that?
So we were doing a counter-terrorism exercise in Sydney Harbour. There hadn't been a shark attack in Sydney Harbour in 60 years. And so as I was always terrified of sharks, always. Every time I got in the water, I had sharks on the brain. But you've got a mission, so you just focus on that and put all the other garbage to the back. And so we turn up to work one day. This is February 2009, which is the end of summer in Australia. Very early in the morning. It's like 6 o'clock in the morning. And I'm doing what we call finning. I'm on the surface on my back, wetsuit on and a pair of fins, and I'm just moving from point A to point B. And the R&D department of the military are trying to track me with this new equipment, unmanned video and sonar. And so I'm just the guinea pig. I'm just swimming along. As far as my work goes, this is a really easy, boring day. And I'm swimming on the surface for about 5 minutes. And then all of a sudden I get this whack in my leg. And I don't really think too much of it because it doesn't hurt. And then I turn around and there's a massive shark's head attached to me. And I've never even seen a large, dangerous shark except for on Shark Week. And so it takes a second or two for my brain to actually kick in and understand what I'm seeing. And I think the shark during that period was trying to work out if I was edible as well, because sharks, they like to investigate things because they don't have hands. They can't come up and go, oh, is that a log or is that a dead fish? Right. And so it's kind of like latched on to me. And I instantly think, okay, I've got to jab it in the eyeball. That's what the crocodile hunter says, jab it in the eyeball. But it had my hand. I see down every time I try and pull my hand, I can see the teeth tearing my flesh a little bit. And so I try with my left hand, but I can't reach the eye. So I grab it by the nose and I try to lever it off me, but that just pushes the teeth of the lower jaw deeper into my leg. And that's when I get the first twinge of pain. And then I cock back to punch it in the nose like you always hear. But before I could do that, it started to shake me. And when a bull shark shakes something, its teeth move like that in unison as a double-sided saw. And so the pain was just incredible. All the fight went out of me. It took me underwater and was just tearing me to pieces. And I thought I was going to die. I remember thinking to myself, I'm not going home today. I'm going to die right now. And it was funny because, they say that your life flashes before your eyes. It kind of did. It's not like time slowed down. Our bodies and our minds are just these incredible machines, and the adrenaline and all that. I was working at warp speed, and I asked myself, are you ready to die? And I thought back and I thought, from where I started out, that troubled kid who was, I was self-harming. I used to slash up my arms with a hobby knife in depression because I was getting bullied at school. I had no control over my life, to this guy that I had become, who I was so proud of, that would protect people and do the right thing and represent my country. I've done more than I even thought I deserved. And so I thought, you know what, if I'm going to die right now, I have no regrets. I'm ready to go. And so I let go with full intention of dying. But then the shark had grabbed my hamstring and my right hand in the same bite, and it ripped them out of my body. And because I was wearing my wetsuit, I was buoyant. So I popped to the surface, and that kind of brought me back to reality. And I thought, oh shit, I'm not dead. I better get out of here before this fucking shark comes back. So I start to swim, but my hand's gone and my arm ends at the end of my wetsuit. And so my medical training kicks in, and I think, I've got to keep that wound above my heart to stem the bleeding, not knowing that my entire hamstring is gone. And so I couldn't feel my leg, and I knew I didn't have a hand. So I'm swimming back to the boat with one hand and one leg through a pool of my own blood. The guys, I had 3 of my teammates in the safety boat, and they said that when they got in close to come and grab me, that it was so thick they could actually taste it in the air. And so fortunately, they got to me before the shark, pulled me out of the water, laid me flat in the boat, and I passed out. I was just so relieved at not being eaten anymore. I just passed out. And my mate Tomo sprung into action because he thought I was going into cardiac arrest. So he starts pummeling me in the chest to wake me back up. And it works, and I wake up, and I look over, and my hand's gone, freshly ripped off by a shark. And I look up, and Tomo's beating the shit out of me. And I just think today sucks.
Yeah, that's
it's a bad day at work.
Yeah, it's a rough day. I'm sure you shook that off real fast. You just woke up the next day and said, "Oh well, let's move on with this new reality." So what happened? What happened?
A little bit.
What happens when so I'm assuming you end up at a hospital somewhere and you wake up at some point. Yeah. I mean, what's going through your head now that you have time to think about the whole severity of the situation?
Well, when I first woke up, I had tubes down my throat so I couldn't speak. And my family, it was like 2 days later. And so my family and friends had flown in from all over the country. They were there and they'd made me this board with letters on it. And so I could like grab a pen and tap out what I wanted to spell. And the first thing I spelled out, because everyone was looking so worried, but you know, that forced smile. And so the first thing I tapped out for them all was fucking shark. And it kind of like, it brought some levity to the room. And, you know, the drugs were really good. I was on a lot of morphine. I had a permanent ketamine bulb attached to my stomach that was dripping ketamine into my system. And so that kind of helped. It gave me a fog. So I couldn't fully focus on what was going on, which became a problem later on. But at that point in the initial early days, it was fine because I really didn't want to think too much about it because it was too soon. And, you know, I had my leg for a week, but because the hamstring was gone, 25 centimeters of the sciatic nerve was gone as well. It had missed my femoral artery by a couple of millimeters, which was so lucky because if it had nicked that, I would have died before I was out of the water.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I couldn't feel the leg. I couldn't move it. And the surgeon came in and he broke it down for me and said, look, you can keep your leg and we can cover it up with a skin graft, but you'll never be able to feel it again. You'll never run again. You'll walk with a limp. Your motivation, your fitness, and your happiness will all suffer. Or we can remove the leg and have you walking, possibly running on a prosthetic within 12 months. And so I was so high, I just looked him in the face and said, Doc, just take the leg and turn me into a Terminator.
Yeah, well, I mean, with the leg, with removing the leg, is how far up the leg are they removing? Is it above the knee?
Exactly. See, the wound was so high, it was right under my glute. And
right.
So if they did a traditional amputation, that would make me a hip disarticulate amputee.
Right.
You've got no limb left to put a prosthetic socket on. And that means you have to have like a strap around your waist. You've got to swing the prosthetic from your hip, which makes life really, really hard. And I know people that have it and it's so difficult.
Right.
They didn't want that for me. So what they did instead was they cut off my foot. They sliced open the back of my leg from the shark bite all the way back down the back of my knee, all the way down to where my foot was missing, peeled all of that flesh off the bone, removed the lower leg bones, sawed out the knee joint, cut the condyles off the end of my femur, and then took that flesh from my ankle and folded my calf muscle into where my hamstring used to be. And so it's non-functioning, but it filled that gap, and now I have an above knee prosthetic.
So you don't have any sensation in that leg?
Oh yeah, I've got the back where the calf muscle is. I don't have any sensation, but the top where some of the quad is left, I have some. But the leg is atrophied because it doesn't actually function.
Right.
What I do have is I have the phantom pains.
Wow. Even that.
So my foot feels like it's there, my hand feels like it's there, but it's not. There's two different degrees of phantom pains. There's the phantom pains where I get an electrical bolt from my hip into my foot that's not there, which will stop me dead in my tracks and make me cry out. For the hand, it's like being stung by a bee on a nerve over and over and over again. And sometimes I'll get it once. I've had it where it's every 15 seconds for 24 hours, and that can really fuck with your mental state. But I also know the triggers. You know, it's like your emotional state. There's triggers to everything. What makes you happy, what makes you sad, what makes you angry. It's same with the body.
Right.
I realized that being dehydrated, being run down, and being hungover were the three indicators of what brought it on worse. And so as long as I can prevent myself from doing those to a certain degree, I haven't had it badly for probably 5 years. But I have the phantom sensation. My hand feels like it's there. It has very, very intense pins and needles and cramping, same as my foot. Never goes away. Not for a minute, not for a second, 24 hours a day, every day of the year. But it's like white noise. In the early days, it would make me cry myself to sleep every night because it's okay when you're out and moving, you're distracted. But when you lay in bed, you've got nothing but your pain.
Yeah.
But now it's kind of like white noise. It's like having music playing in the background. You just forget about it until you think about it.
Okay. And how many years later is this?
This is 11 and a half years now.
Wow. So even 11 years later, like you said, it never goes away. I didn't realize, I thought the phantom pains were something that maybe occurred after the amputation and then it goes away over time. But
So
11,
I think for some people it does.
yeah. So it affects everybody differently. There's no two people.
Yeah, I think so. There are some therapies. There's this thing called mirror box therapy where you trick your brain into thinking the hand is still there. And I tried that, but it didn't really work. And I'm sure there's a whole bunch, that's a really old technique as well. There's probably new ways to do it. What I did to help me get to sleep was I had a TEMS machine. And so I used to locate the areas on my leg where I felt like that electrical current was coming from, and I put the pads there and try and replicate that electric current, and that would basically cancel it out and get me to sleep. The only problem is during the night, the pads would come off and sometimes attach to my balls and wake me up very shockingly.
Yeah.
You don't want to wake up with your balls being electrocuted.
No, I don't want to wake up with my balls. Anything happen. Well, I shouldn't say anything, but anything painful. All right. Now let's go back to this. You're back in bed. This is fresh after the second amputation or the doctor's procedure. Now, what's the rehab process like? Because even then that you're going to be fitted for a prosthetic arm and a prosthetic leg, right?
Yeah, well, a hand. Technically, it's just a hand.
Okay, it's just a hand. How much of your arm? You lost the hand.
Yeah,
you didn't lose the entire
up to the wrist. Up to the wrist.
Okay.
So, but dude, it was. I had some time to think, obviously. So I'm laying in bed, and the day after and the second day after, my leg has been taken off, and I'm thinking back, and I'm thinking how I was terrified. I was so scared because my whole career was based on the fact that I could do anything the military asked me to do. And if I can't do that, then what am I going to do with my life? Because that is all I know how to do. I don't want to go back to working a bar. I'll be the most highly trained bartender assassin in the world. And so that I channeled that fear into a motivator.
Right.
And I thought, you know what? All I have to do is, like you said, I knew I was getting prosthetics. So all I have to do is train 3 times harder to be half as good as my peers. And maybe I can convince them to let me go back to work. And there was that old Cuba Gooding Jr. movie with Robert De Niro, Men of Honor.
Oh, I remember that.
So where he loses his leg. And so that was a bit of a motivator for me as well. I'm like, okay, well, if I can train hard enough, maybe I can get back and I can go and be an instructor. And so 2 days after my leg was chopped off, I'm laying in my bed and I'm thinking, okay, what do I need to do? Because it was such a complicated situation that I couldn't work out where to begin. But I'm just a simple guy. I like simple things. Complicated, it's just too fucking complicated. And so I always try and bring simplicity to everything. And I thought, okay, well, what do I want? It's a simple question. And we can ask ourselves that every single day, every single minute. What do I want? Do I want a good life or do I want a bad life? Simple, right? Everyone wants a good life. Okay, then how are you going to put a plan in place to achieve that good life? And I thought, well, shit, there's not much I can do. I can't even go to the toilet by myself. I'm still pissing and shitting in a dead bedpan. I can't get up. And so I thought, okay, well, what made life so good before? And I thought, well, my routine was I'd get up and I'd go to work and we'd do PT every single day as a soldier, as a clearance driver, PT. And I thought, well, why would I break a good routine? And so I looked around at what I could use to try and work out, and I saw the bar above my bed used for assisting me to sit up. And so I grabbed onto that bar and I started trying to do one-arm chin-ups on the bar above my bed. And the surgeon walked in and he was not impressed. not as impressed as I was. But the simple fact was I couldn't lay there and be a victim.
Right.
I could not overthink the situation, because sometimes you have to turn off that and you just got to take action, because thinking will only get you so far, and then it can take you down the rabbit hole of depression. And like we both know how slippery that process is. And I didn't want to go back to that. And so I started taking action. I did all my own rehab. I did all my own therapy. The Navy wanted me to talk to a counselor, and they sent one to my bedside. But it came pretty evident within about 5 minutes that she had no idea how to deal with someone at my level of activity. And so I thanked her and I sent her on her way. And I thought, you know what? I don't need to sit here talking about how I feel. I already know how I feel.
Right.
Shit. I don't want to. I don't
Right.
want to talk about feeling shit. I want to take some action. I want to change this shit feeling into a good feeling. And so instead of therapy, I got onto the internet. You know, we have the wealth of the world's knowledge within a few keystrokes. Okay, what do I need? I need prosthetics. So I started Googling prosthetics. What's the best stuff available? Because I knew they were going to give me whatever I wanted because it's the military, you know. And so I looked for the best stuff I could find, and I went onto YouTube and I watched video clips of Paralympians and dudes with no legs climbing mountains. And the more research I did, the more I realized how little I had to fear. Because if these people can do it, there's no reason that we can't do it. You know, It's just a mindset. It's a dedication. And if you pour your heart and your soul into achieving these dreams that maybe you think are impossible, maybe other people think they're impossible, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, especially when you're in a scenario where you've got nothing left to lose. Go for fucking impossible. Think outside the box. Think crazy. Maybe crazy will fucking work. And so that's all I did. I just adopted this mindset where nothing was unachievable, but I had to have patience and perseverance, the two biggest tools, because you can't expect, you know, I had to learn how to do everything, not just one-handed, but with my non-master hand, and, you know, and on one leg. And so I knew how to do things, but my body wouldn't allow me to do them. And so I had to have patience, but I also had to persevere and keep pushing forward and keep trying and not get discouraged, because, you know, it gets really frustrating. And one of the greatest tools, and it's so simple, and you'll probably agree with this, the simplest tool for getting through that anger, the anxiety, the frustration, simply breathing. Just taking a couple of, like, 4 or 5 long, deep, slow breaths, recenter yourself, and give it another go. And, you know, most of the time that works.
Yeah. I like what you said. You have to have patience and perseverance. And you could say that about anything worth achieving, whether it's building a business, whether it's achieving a high level fitness goal, whatever it is, you're going to need patience and perseverance, because it's always going to take longer than you would like. And if you're committed to the process and you're not attached to the outcome, you'll last long enough to get that outcome.
Yeah. I think that's something that we lose as adults.
Crazy too, like you said. You can't see the problem with people is like I don't know if you follow MMA, right? UFC and all that.
Yeah,
but
somewhat.
Yeah, John Jones is considered the best fighter to ever do it, right? That's pretty much, everyone pretty much looks at him as this guy's the greatest one to ever do it. Now, this guy also gets into a lot of trouble. He's a wild guy. He likes to drink a lot. He does cocaine. He's always getting DUIs. He's a wild guy. Now, the average person looks at him and they go, why does he do all that stuff? Why can't he be more like me? If I were him, I'd be really disciplined. I would be at home all the time. I'd be watching TV. I go, see, here's the problem, though. You're looking at the greatest fighter to ever do it, and you're wondering why he doesn't think more like you, just a regular guy who's doing nothing impressive in his life.
Yeah.
He doesn't think like you. I mean, the reason
he's a warrior.
Good is he's a wild guy. He's a crazy guy. And that his personal life is just an extension of that. But if you take away all of that personal life shenanigans from the outside perspective looking in, who knows what effect that's going to have on him as a fighter. If he tries to be a Shaolin monk and just be Mr. Discipline 24/7, instead of that wild guy who can do cocaine a week before a fight, not even train for it, and still win, then who knows what he's going to become, though. So the problem with average thinking is that you look at exceptional people and you don't, there's a disconnect of they're thinking in this crazy manner, but we need to be more practical, because that's the advice we're always getting is be practical, be reasonable, and so forth. But I was telling this young guy the other day, I go, look, you can create any kind of lifestyle you want for yourself. You know, we don't live in the world now anymore where you have to be some 9-to-5 and do some terrible job for 30 years and then retire and be old and go on a cruise ship around the world. Now you can create an amazing lifestyle where you love what you do, you have plenty of free time, you make a great income. These things are totally possible, and many people achieve it. Oops, looks like I'm talking to myself right here. All right. Very cool.
Yeah, it's not too bad. If you got a spare $90,000 laying around.
So the prosthetic arm, that's where you still have your forearm, so it just goes over that, and then it's a for usage of a. Now, is this a mechanical hand that moves around, or how does that work?
Electronic. It's the same,
wow.
Not similar to the leg, but this is called a myoelectric arm. And so on the inside of the socket in there that press against my skin are two sensor pads. And so they sense the electrical impulse of my forearm muscle activating. So basically when I do that and flex the inside muscle, the hand closes. When I flex the top muscle, it opens. If I want to change it, I give it a little flick. It beeps and it goes to beer drinking grip.
That's amazing. Now, when you lift, can you lift weights with that, or how do you work out?
No, so it's like we were talking about before, the right tool for the right job. So it's I've got a plethora of devices that I use. So when I travel, my luggage can get really heavy depending on what I'm doing. So it's similar in that it's carbon fiber from here down, but there's no electronics in it. It basically just anchors above my elbow with a bit of plastic and a Velcro strap. I roll on a silicone liner onto my skin first, and I plug that in. And on the end of that, there's a pin, and the pin locks into the end. And then I have different attachments. So I have a big steel hook I use for all my pulling exercises. I've got a clamp that flips over and butterfly spins down, and I can put dumbbells in that, or, it's got a U shape on the bottom, so I can just rest a barbell in it and do press ups and stuff like that.
Right.
Then you go to like kayaking, and I've got, an attachment for that. I have an attachment for parachuting. I have a specific leg for scuba diving, a leg for running, and there's a lot of shit.
It's just amazing, though, that all of that technology is available, because it sounds like doing everything that you would normally be doing.
Yeah, pretty much. There's not much that I can't do. Physically, I can't run up and down stairs.
Right.
But everything else with the right tool, man, I use so many different little devices and tricks when I'm in the gym training, like lifting hooks that you might use for deadlifts. So I'll put that if I want to do really heavy curls, I can put that strap around my forearm, the hook hangs down, and I can curl like a 70-pound dumbbell. And what that does is, because it's a shorter lever, I can lift heavier, but it actually puts a lot less strain on my arm than having the dumbbell out here and doing, 40s, because it's way back here. So I find that my elbow health is a lot better on the right side.
Oh, very interesting. Well, at least there's some plus side.
Right. Yeah, it's not many. Like if I break a leg, I just send it back to the shop.
Lost your hand, but you can curl a 70-pound dumbbell with much more efficiency now. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we were talking about, you had to get into this exceptional mindset rather than this mindset of maybe how the average person would deal with it. You have to think outside of a crazy spectrum to handle the situation fully.
Yeah, and I think that was because I wasn't always that way. And I think there's a misconception about that people are born leaders or people are born achievers or any things. It's all bullshit. You can learn any skill. The Army taught me to push past my boundaries. The Navy taught me that I didn't have any boundaries. And then I had to utilize that in resetting a whole belief system in my head about what the human mind and body is capable of, just so I could go back to normal life.
Right.
So breaking down those misconceptions and preconceived notions that we have because we're programmed to have them, that it's so vitally important to the future of your life and your well-being.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. So you're beginning this recovery process. Did you eventually get back in the military in some capacity? How did things progress?
Yeah, so the Chief of Navy, because my shark attack was so widely publicized, because first shark attack in Sydney Harbour in 60 years, first Navy clearance diver ever attacked. So it was all over the place. 60 Minutes did it, like it was all over the news. And so the Navy didn't want to look bad. So the Chief of Navy said, as long as Paul wants a job in the Navy, he'll have one.
Yeah.
I don't think they realized I wanted my old job back. But there's no way I would be pushed under a desk. And so that was the goal for me, was get back to work. And so I put every ounce of my effort into achieving that goal. I had a very good friend of mine. He quit his job as a chef and came and moved into my apartment at Bondi Beach. And he worked as my carer. He drove me to the army base so I could train every day. I was out trying to walk. Once I got my prosthetic leg, I was out down the beach trying to walk every day with my cane. Sometimes I threw up. Sometimes I nearly passed out. But, I'd been through that pain before. I used to run races for the Navy. I'd run up and down mountains in Tasmania over 100 kilometers. And so I knew pain. I knew how to push past that sort of pain. And so that's all I had to do, was just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And like I said earlier, I did all my own therapy because in the military, you do get a lot of injuries. And so I'd been to the physio so much, and I kept my ears and eyes open. I'd learned so much about what my body needed to recover, what exercises to do. And so I did everything myself, trained myself, and I went back to work full time as an instructor after 6 months.
Wow, that's amazing. And then how long were you in the military after?
I stayed for 3 years.
Okay.
But it was kind of torturous because I was teaching people to do something that I love to do without ever getting to do it myself.
Right.
And so the work satisfaction slipped. I was getting harder and harder on my trainees. I was drinking more. I was in a lot of pain because I was trying to keep up. And we might finish work at 2:00 in the morning. And we've just finished 1,500 push-ups. Every time someone screws up on course, you get 50 push-ups. And so I would never ask my trainees to do something that I'm not willing to do either. And so I'd be doing 1,500 push-ups from midnight to 2 a.m. And then we got to start work again at 6. And so it was just killing me. Plus I'm, apparently amputees, leg amputees specifically, burn 80% more energy than a two-legged person. And so I'm doing all of these hours trying to make it look easy, trying to make it seem like I can do this job, but slowly it was killing me in my body and my spirit. And it got to a point where all I wanted to do was go back to the teams. And I went to the boss of the dive school and I asked him, and he just said, there is no chance. To go to the teams, you have to be deployable for war. And I'm like, that kind of drove it home. I'm like, yeah, look, all my fingers work at once. I'm probably not going to be good in a combat situation with my gun, and I'm not as fleet on my feet as I once was. And so that drove it home that I needed to find another avenue to build a better life.
Yeah. So what happens next? What do you move on to after the military?
I got an offer from Penguin to write a book about the story, and they loved it. They didn't expect all the self-harming, the childhood depression, the opening for Snoop Dogg. And so they were like blown away when they got this book. And so that led into speaking jobs. And the only thing I was more afraid of than sharks was public speaking.
That's a big for a lot of people.
Yeah, for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I'd been asked to do it a lot when I was just working at the dive school, and I turned them all away. I couldn't think of anything worse than getting on stage and looking like an idiot. But then
I've been on stage looking like an idiot before, so I know that. I've had all the fears that people have about public speaking. I've experienced those.
Oh yeah.
Get it.
How did that work out? But you learned from it, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is way before. By the time I got into the fitness industry, I started off as a kettlebell instructor, and I taught workshops all over the U.S., then eventually all over the world. So, I mean, by that point, I was very comfortable with public speaking. But in college, if you had to get up in front of a room and speak, I could do it, but I wasn't any good at all. I wasn't even trying to be good. I just wanted to get through it, right? You're not even thinking, how do I entertain people? How do I project my voice? How do I change levels, as I like to say, where a really good public speaker, you may change tone where you're going, and then we went here, and then, like that kind of thing. So you keep people off their kilter. You're not just in this one monotone the whole time.
Yeah, it's a very hard lesson to learn.
Yeah, if you talk really intense the whole time, for the first 10 minutes, great, but then people shut off. If you're quiet and so forth, people shut off too. So you have the really good public speakers. I noticed this, whether they do it consciously or unconsciously, they're always changing levels. They're always changing cadence. They're talking fast. Now they're talking slow. Now they're enunciating certain words. Now they're quiet, and you really have to pay attention. Now they're loud, they're intense. So I love speakers like that because I draw a lot of material. Yeah, but then my first job out of college, I did some network marketing crap. It wasn't even a job. It was a pyramid scheme, legalized pyramid scheme with the premise that we're actually trying to sell products. And we're not trying to sell products. We're trying to create a pass the buck organization where we get other people to sell products. And then we sit around and do nothing, collecting royalties. That's the goal of every network marketing person. So anyway, while I was involved with that, I had to give these presentations to recruit new people. So sometimes there would be 20, 30 people in a room, and I'd just walk people through it. Now, the first time I got asked to do that, I was doing pretty well for the first few minutes, and then I went completely blank. I mean, completely blank. If you asked me what my name was at that moment, and then I freaked out because I was like, man, I don't remember what I'm supposed to say. And I start sweating, and I'm just repeating the first. I'm like, let's go back to the first three things again. Let me repeat those. In my memory, and I can see people I know in the audience just like, oh no. You know, some of them are trying not to laugh because it's funny. Others are feeling horrible for me. Eventually, my manager had to come up and save me. He's like, hey, everybody, let's give like.
He's our special kid for the week.
Yeah, exactly. He's like our special needs presenter here. Yeah, he tried. Let's give him a little A for effort, right? But you know what's funny is a lot of people who have gone through that, they never want to do they don't want to do any public speaking ever again. They're totally traumatized.
That's where I was.
I couldn't wait to get back in front of the room. I go, you got to put me back in front of the room this coming Friday. You know, I need a week to work out what I did wrong and figure out some solutions. But I need to be back in front of the room ASAP. Otherwise, this is just going to kill me to have such a horrible present, like worst case scenario. I'm going to go, okay, worst case scenario has already happened. So if it happens again, at least it's not the first time. So this time what I did is I had a monitor in front of me, and on the back side I had some notes in case I got lost that only I could see. And I actually did get lost, and I was able to look at that cheat sheet and keep things going. So that little trick like that actually helped. Even if you write something on your palm, anything.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's what I need to talk about. But you know, the funny thing is I've done hundreds of public speaking events, either through my kettlebell workshops or through just lecturing at various organizations. And I go blank almost every time. The difference is I don't panic because I have experience. So I'll make a joke about it. I'll be on a roll and I'll go, you know, I don't even know what I'm talking about. And I'll just point to someone. What did I just say? Oh, left. Now I'm really comfortable, so I can do that. I don't freak out anymore. But that just comes with experience.
Exactly.
So no fear whatsoever of public speaking. But it didn't start that way. I had total fear of public speaking, just like everybody else. But once you've done it enough, you just go into this character. It's just automatic.
Yeah. I when I was 19, I started an IT course, and halfway through, we had to talk in front of the class, and this was going to be a weekly thing. And so there was people that had real jobs in IT already, and they're doing PowerPoints with laser pointers. I'm a 19-year-old kid. I kicked out of home. I flunked high school. I'm reading like something I stole out of a book about hacking, and I'm shaking, and my eyes are watering, and my face went red, and I quit the next day, and I never went back.
That's horrible.
And so when people started asking me to speak, I just no. And then, and as I was leaving the Navy, a cancer camp for kids asked me to speak. What are you going to do? You can't say no to kids with cancer.
Right.
And so I went along feeling ridiculous because I was terrified of these 20 children, like big badass infantry soldier, Navy clearance diver, and I'm scared of talking to children. And so I went in there and I did this little thing that I prepared, and I walked out of there on top of the fucking world. Nice. I couldn't believe it. I felt so good. I'd made these kids laugh. I'd made them forget that they were sick. I'd made them forget that they were going back to hospital. And I thought, maybe I can do this. And so it just progressed from there. And it turned into a whole career where you just, as you were saying, you just learn as you go along. And I've learned to give more of myself. A very good friend of mine taught me that in vulnerability, there's strength. And so I started to try and give more of myself, and women started crying, men started crying. I think I'm the only speaker that's had multiple people pass out in his presentations, because
Wow.
I show all the surgery photo, I show the footage of the actual shark attack, and up to this point I've had 68 people pass out.
Wow.
Yeah, 65 men.
Footage. Oh, old men, huh?
Yeah. I did a launch for a Microsoft at one point.
Yeah, right? Women birth, they're not going to pass out watching.
Yeah, no, women are tough.
It's going to be
at one point, I did a launch for Microsoft 10 in Sydney, and it was about 120 people, standing room only. Yeah. 6 people passed out in one go. Even the AV guy passed out over his control panel and was like dribbling into the electronics. I take great pride in that.
I've had guys quit my workshop, meaning that halfway through they're going, I don't think I can make it through, and they just leave, right? That's happened a couple of times. I've never had a woman do that. They suck it up and push all the way through. I mean, it wasn't even a doubt. I've never even had a female client even consider. They just push it all the way through. So it doesn't surprise me that it was, out of the 68 people, they were all men.
Yeah, well, that's why my good friend Damien Mander runs the International Anti-Poaching Foundation. I've been out there and worked with him in Zimbabwe when he had all male rangers. And over the last couple of years, he's switched to all female. And he said these women are far tougher than any men I've ever worked with. You know, these women are from backgrounds like rape and domestic abuse, have been kicked out of their villages and their tribes. Yeah. And he's like, they are so hardcore. None of them quit because they find purpose in it and it drives them. And he's like he couldn't believe how hardcore these chicks are.
That's amazing. I've seen the photos. I mean, the women look super dedicated.
Yeah. The movie just came out, Akashinga.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, the movie just came out as well, Akashinga. So if you go online to the International Anti-Poaching Foundation, I think there's a link to the documentary there. It's really amazing.
Well, I'm definitely going to watch it this weekend. That sounds good. I didn't realize that was out already, because I've been looking for it. Yeah, very cool. So you go down this route of public speaking, and you're an author now. You're public speaking, and you're sustaining a career doing that. You're making a nice living.
Dude, I felt guilty. That's like, I started off at I think $2,000 for a speaking job, and I felt bad about that. That was that was more than half of my 2 weeks Navy wage. Right. Then it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger as my name went around. There was great feedback and reviews, and I turned it into a whole career. And then because I'd done so much media and publicity around shark attacks, because every time there was another shark interaction in Australia, the media would come to me for a comment about why it would happen, how people stay safe. And so out of the desire to not look like a dumbass on television, I had to learn about sharks. And so I got comfortable in front of the camera, and then, a couple of years later, Discovery Channel comes along.
Well, let's talk about that, because it's wild that you're on a shark show, given
I'm really stupid.
As if that would be the last thing you want to do, yet you're going right back into that abyss. Was that part of it? Was it part of it that you wanted to get over this? Maybe you have a fear of sharks now, given what happened, which was completely warranted. But what motivated you to even want to pursue or even take on something like that, since it came to you?
Well, the funny thing after the shark attack was I wasn't really scared of sharks anymore, because once you've faced death like that in the most horrific and brutal of ways, you realize that there's nothing left to be afraid of. And death is actually not scary at all. In that moment before death, it's actually quite peaceful. And so I realized that I had this unwarranted fear. And so I got to live without clinging to a mortal coil anymore. And I was free to do whatever I wanted because there was no fear left. And so for 60 minutes, they put me into an aquarium, and I saw what you guys call a sand tiger. We call it a grey nurse shark. And I knew they were like puppy dogs of the sea, but they still kind of looked freaky. And so I just kind of built my way up from there. A couple of years later, they wanted me to go and face the animal that tried to kill me. And we went to Fiji, and I was surrounded by 30 bull sharks. And all the crew had left except for me and the guy that runs the company, and he's an ex-South African clearance diver. So we got along really well. And everyone had left except for me, him, and the cameraman from Fiji. And I'd been watching him feed these bull sharks by hand. And everyone was gone. I looked at him, I looked at the box, and he just gave me like a little silent nod. And I reached in, pulled out a fish head, and hand fed a bull shark. And that was it. I was like, I was hooked. Like, shark diving is amazing. There's nothing you can do. There's no other experience you can have that can replicate diving with sharks. It's incredible.
With sharks, are you in some kind of protected cage? Or how does this?
No,
I would do it, right? I would be. I would be a little submarine looking at sharks.
This is 90 feet deep in Fiji. There's probably 20 to 30 bull sharks. Then you've got 6 other species of shark everywhere. So, and then you add the fish. You can barely see the water. There is no cage. You've got some Fijian dudes behind you with a shepherd's crook.
So you're completely vulnerable is where you're going.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. You're putting a lot of faith in these guys to look after you.
Doesn't scare you at all, given your history?
No, not anymore. No.
Wow.
And so that just led into a whole nother career.
Yeah.
And now I get to work in television. It's a great transfer from the military. I get paid to have adventures. I get paid to hang out with my friends. I got paid to do my parachute course and then parachute directly into the ocean to survive for 48 hours with no food or water, surrounded by sharks.
Great story, and then you have such a great personality as well, and you're really good on camera. So I think it's a perfect storm for a show to want to have someone like you on. I mean,
maybe I bring it a bit of justification as well. Having a guy that's been attacked by a shark. And you know what? I love it, but I also love the message behind what I get to do there. Not just for shark conservation, but also showing people that technically disabled people can do things that maybe you can't do.
Absolutely.
You know, lifting people up. It's much of it is about that.
We had a guy on my other podcast. His name is Garrison Reed, and he was shot when he was a teenager, so he's paralyzed from the waist down. And he's a competitive powerlifter, paraplegic powerlifter, but I mean, he can bench press well over 300 pounds.
Damn.
Often bench presses more than, I mean, he's in a different weight class because obviously his weight is different than the average person who can use his or her legs, but he's able to compete against people that are quote unquote fully functional and just wipe the floors with them. He's super strong on those movements, and he's really dedicated, and he's extremely enthusiastic about training when you talk to him. So when you talk to someone like him or someone like you, I'm not thinking handicapped or disabled in any way. You guys are living life fully. I would say anyone who's not living life fully has some kind of disability, some kind of mental problem. You're just doing a job you hate for 30 years. That to me is a psychosis. That's needs to go to therapy. Just the fact that you can do a job you hate day after day after day, year after year after year. And the last job I had was in 2001. I got fired from it. Best thing that could have happened, because I know for not getting into the industry that I'm in now. And I remember before I got laid off, though, I would just look around at people that were doing similar things to me, but way older. And I go, this is my future right here if I don't make some kind of change.
Yeah.
Northern Virginia, where I grew up, it's boring as hell. I'm a strong believer you have to get out of wherever it is you grew up. So I don't care where it is. I don't care if you grew up in New York City. You need to get out of there and go somewhere unfamiliar to reach your potential, in my opinion. So I knew I needed to get out of there. I knew I wanted to get into the fitness industry. So once I got laid off, I go, that's it. I'm never going to work for someone again. I made that line in the sand. Never. I'm never going to work for someone again. And I'm also never going to do some job I can't stand anymore. I'm going to make sure that I'm successful doing something I enjoy. So I never have to go back to something like that. And I think that's seen as crazy behavior. Wow, you're going to teach people how to swing cannonballs in the park? 20 people probably owned kettlebells in the whole country when I started my career. Yeah. But people that are really successful, they don't look at the world the same way as people that are not successful. They see opportunities that other people don't see. That's why they're successful. Yeah. And you have a brain that operates differently than the average person to see those things, to see opportunities. And I'm often very good at seeing opportunities before they blow up. Kettlebells was one. Hormone optimization was another. I got into that around 2005. Now everybody's talking about hormone optimization. 90% of the people that don't know anything. They don't know what they're talking about, but it's a buzzword now. So it's something that people feel they need to know and people are asking about. Yeah. So all of this comes from just pursuing whatever my interests are. It's not something that I've contrived going, okay, what's going to be the next big thing? I never think like that. I go, what am I interested in? because whatever I'm interested in is going to propel me to become an expert in that, and then, or have a level of expertise in it. I'm going to enjoy it, and then my enthusiasm is going to shine from that. It's going to have, there's going to be some fluidity. It's going to be some continuity. Yeah. When a lot of trainers, they're thinking, what's going to make me money? Oh, I need to learn kettlebells to make money. I need to do TRX to make money. And I go, that's
you need to flip that totally on its head. Don't think about what's going to make you money. Think about what you would pay to do.
Right. There we go.
And then turn that into a job. I would literally pay to do my job, to get flown around the world, to go diving with sharks, hanging out with my mates, talking on, like, I love my job. I love my life. And obviously it's harder for a lot of people. Like I'm a single guy. I don't have any kids. I'm not married. And so it's easier for me. It's much harder for someone that has a wife and kids and a full-time job to switch over. But then you hear these stories of young women, single mums that aren't making much money. They're paying, they're working full-time jobs. They're paying their way through medical school to chase a dream, and they pull it off. And so really, is there any excuse?
There's always opportunities. There's always a way to make things happen. And I think that a lot of times corporations want you to have a wife and kids, or a husband and kids, because you're much easier to control when you have all of those things. You're less likely to tell the boss to F off when you know you have a mortgage and you've got kids to take care of. Yeah. And maybe you're the only person that's providing the finances for the family. So it's going to be much more difficult in that situation. But when you are single and you're not materialistic and you're not tied into the expectations of this lifestyle, now you can maneuver a little bit more effectively.
Yeah.
But most people, unfortunately, they almost create these entanglements so that it's difficult to move.
But it's the programming. It's what we're trained to do. That's what everyone thinks is the normal sequence of events.
Right.
You finish school, you either go to college, you join the military, or you get a trade, then you get a wife, then you get a kid, then you get the house, and it's all laid out.
Yeah.
I hit that point. I saw that when I was back with as an instructor as well. And I was like, no, I can't. Like, my girlfriend wanted to move in, and I'm like, I'm still recovering. I can't do this. Like, she's great, but I need to learn how to survive on my own. And so I couldn't envision me having her move in, then get engaged, and then get married, and then have the kids, and then I got to find a job. And I was like, no, I had to wipe the slate clean and start all over again.
Yeah.
No one out there start wiping slates clean with your kids and your wives and stuff. There's not a message in that. It's just like, sometimes you got to wipe your mindset clean.
Right. I mean, and you can use having kids as a big motivator to make it happen too, because now I have to make this work because I want to be able to provide for my family, and I want them to see me as an example of being happy and having the courage to pursue these bizarre goals that the average person think is possible.
And that's very important. But for me, and probably for you, what is the most important thing to you in life?
The most important thing to me is to own my days.
For me, it's happiness.
Yeah. Well, if I own my days, I'm happy. If I don't, then I'm happy.
but it's always a route to happiness. How people are working their ass off, so they've got enough money to provide things for their family. So it all leads to happiness. So if you can tap into that happiness, find out what it is, whether it's like, if you're working an office job 9 to 5 and you're getting through it, but then you get to go home to your family and your kids and you love it and you're happy and all of that stuff, then that's perfect for you. Surround yourself in all of the things that you love. Do the things that you love. I don't care if it's like walking your dog, going out with your mates for a beer, covering yourself in blue glitter and dancing in a bowl of jelly. Like, it doesn't matter. Just do the things that make you happy. And a lot of the times people, that's the biggest problem, is people don't know what makes them happy anymore. They've put themselves so far aside for what they have to do. They forget about what makes them happy and what they want to do. So as an adult, sometimes you got to push that self-confidence issues aside and go and try something new. Get out there in the world and try stand-up paddleboarding. Maybe you can't do it. Try surfing. Maybe it sucks. Don't worry about how bad you are at something. Go back to being a kid again, where the journey is the adventure.
No, I love it. That's said really well. And I think that happiness for me is doing something that's purposeful. In other words, I have to enjoy what I'm doing to make money. I don't care about money just for the sake of making money. I'm not going to do a job I hate to make a lot of money. I'm not a materialistic guy. I've already got the house. I already have a nice car. I don't need another house. I don't need another nice car. I don't even need those. But, I have them and it's nice. But I would, if I had to reduce my income substantially or work for someone else to make more money to fulfill this materialism, I would definitely choose the former over the latter. Because I need to enjoy what I'm doing. In college, I learned this, that I'm only good at things I enjoy doing. So when I was just taking classes, I wasn't doing well. I was just passing. And then I really got into religious studies. I met my professor mentor at Lewis and Clark College in 1994. And he really got me into Sufism, Islamic mysticism. He got me into Buddhism. Hinduism I grew up with, but I got more into it via his tutelage. And then all of a sudden it became fun. I would do the coursework and then I would do extra work just for myself, not for extra credit, just for myself. I go, I want to learn more about this topic. And then all of a sudden I started getting straight A's, not because that was a goal. It was just a side effect of doing something that captivated me. So I learned that lesson on that you're going to be most happy and you're going to be really good at something you enjoy doing. But if you don't enjoy doing it, you're not going to be good at it. And as a result, it's not going to be fulfilling and you're not going to be happy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and fitness has always been a big passion of mine too. So I just merged those two worlds together eventually in 2002. And then the rest is history. My life has been incredible for the last 17 years. And ever since I got this industry.
Such a great message in that. Living by example is the best thing you can do.
100%. 100%. Your most powerful message is your example. That's what I always say about vegan people that are always pitching like us, right? Let's talk about that in a minute too. So the mistake a lot of vegans make is they're always out there just trying to convince people to stop eating meat, almost like a religion type thing. And that's all fine and good if you embody health. So if someone's looking at you and they're going, wow, this guy looks really healthy, energetic, and skin looks healthy, it's easier to receive that message. You start thinking, okay, there might be something to this. He's definitely making it work. Let me see what I can do with this. But if you're unhealthy and you say all the right things, but you don't exude any strength and health, then people might like what you're saying, but they're not going to be propelled.
It's not going to be as impactful.
Yeah, based on your personal example. So your personal example is either going to add fire to the argument or it's going to take away from it.
Yeah, I find that there's enough people out there. I don't want to say cramming it down people's throats. There are those people as well. There are other people living by example that are fit and healthy. On their Instagram page, their name is vegan so-and-so or someone vegan. I prefer a different approach. I prefer, probably like you, to just live by example.
Right.
I talk about it occasionally. I'll promote something great that I see. Like the Game Changers movie and all that sort of stuff, but I prefer for it to be a surprise. And people see me working out and they see me in the gym and they come over for a chat, or they'll come over to say, oh man, that's really inspiring, whatever. And we get talking and they're like, what do you do for your diet? I'm like, well, I don't eat animals or dairy. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I stopped eating all animal products. I try not to use the V word because I don't want to scare them off too easy, because there's such a negative connotation attached to it these days. So I just talk to them about it. This is what I do. This is what I eat. And I think that has, in some instances, much more impact than trying to cram it down someone's throat, because it gives them the opportunity to take a minute and shift their perception.
Well, I'll tell you what's going on here, because I have the same exact philosophy that you have. So what happens here is these people are coming to you and they're asking you about your training. They're going, wow, this is impressive. What's your diet like? They're asking you now. You're not telling them, you're not giving them unsolicited advice. They're asking you for solicited advice. So that's a totally different, that's a different scenario. That's positioning. Just talking to people that have no interest in what you have to say, that's prospecting. You're wasting time. So I do the same thing. People see me at the gym. They're like, wow, you're really strong. And sometimes people ask me about training stuff. They go, what's your diet like? And I go, I don't eat meat at all. Oh, you like vegan diet? I go, yeah, I've been doing that for 26 years. And then all of a sudden they're going, wow. Now, if they knew that ahead of time,
they probably wouldn't even talk to you.
Disqualify. Well, they might say, yeah, I bet that guy's on TRT, or he's on Anavar, or he's taking anabolics, or it's a genetic, he's just a genetic anomaly. He can just hold muscle on any diet. Those kind of things will start going through. But when they see you as an example of what I want to achieve, They don't have no clue that you're on a vegan diet. They just see you as an example of, wow, that guy's really strong. Let me go talk to him and get the story. And then they hear it. They're like, well, wait a minute, I need to look into that because it's clearly working for him. And I've been doing it for 26 years too. So
that's a really long time.
That's more compelling than someone who's been doing it for 3 months or even a year. That's not a long time. So it's easy to say, well, you've only been doing it for a year. The negatives are going to start coming, in 5 years. So the longer you've been doing it, also just being strong past 40 is already going to get people inquisitive. They're going, wow, this guy's getting close to 50 and he's still hitting PRs at the gym. Let me talk to him. Let me see what's going on with him. So I agree with you completely. That's the way I prefer to do it too. That's why when I was on Rich Roll's podcast, he goes, why do you hide being a vegan? And you seem to keep it on the down low. And I go, I'm not hiding it. I've written articles about it. It's on my website. I just don't have a fucking middle name. I'm not going to have an Instagram, Mike Vegan Mike, the Vegan Beast Mahler. It's like, okay, motherfucker, we don't need to know that about. Just like, you know what? Just put yourself out there, be an interesting person, and people are going to look into what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly right.
So how long have you been doing the plant-based? I'm not going to say vegan. We're going to use different plant-based.
Look, it is vegan. It's not plant-based because I began it for ethical reasons. Because initially it was once again through Damien Mander, a god amongst clearance divers. And when I was working with him, I saw him eating from a separate pot to the Rangers. And so I'm thinking, oh, this motherfucker, he's keeping the good meat for himself. And so I went over with a little smart ass comment like, oh, so how come you're eating? And he's like, well, I don't eat meat. And it just threw me off. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't eat meat? He's like, well, I'm vegan. And I was like, what's that? And so he broke it down for me. I'm like, why? Like, why would you do that? And he said, well, look, I was out here investing my life into protecting these animals. And then I was coming home and I was eating the animals. And I felt like a hypocrite. And that struck a chord with me because initially it goes back to that do as I do, not as I say. Like in the military, the worst leaders that you have, the worst officers you have are the ones that don't lead by example. Do as I say, not as I do. And so I've always tried to be the do as I do. And I'm out there on TV talking about sharks and saving the oceans and saving the fish and then saving the planet and all, and yet I'm contributing to that. And so I didn't want to be a hypocrite. So I went home from Africa, went vegan, lasted 3 days. I didn't know what the hell to eat. And so I put it on the back burner for a while, and I just went on with my life, and it just kept popping up in my world. Next, there was John Joseph was introduced to me by another friend of mine who's a big old school English gangster. He's a mountain of a man, and he's vegan, and he introduced me to John. And then there were some other people that popped up, and I'm like, okay, I'm a firm believer that when the universe is speaking to you, you need to listen because it's for a reason. And so I listened. And I thought about it again. Okay, I'm not going to make the same mistake. I'll do it slowly. I canceled out kangaroo to start with because I used to eat a lot of kangaroo, very lean and low cholesterol. You think about what a cow does and think about what a kangaroo does. I'm like, if I'm going to eat an animal, I want something that's strong and tough. So stop that. I just canceled things one by one over a series of months and started adding new things that I'd never eaten before. I used to hate vegetables, hated them. And so that just came down to the fact that my mum couldn't cook them very well. And now I know how to make balsamic glazed oven roasted Brussels sprouts. And my cooking game went to another level.
That's same thing with me as well, because you learn how to make really good meals. I mean, most of the meals I make at home are better than 90% of stuff I have in restaurants. I've just fine-tuned this over the years. But Indian cuisine, Thai cuisine, they do vegetables really well, especially Indian food. I mean, Indian like any vegetable tastes like the best thing you've ever had.
In the early days, I made it easy on myself, and I just got a vegan meal delivery. That was just the easiest way to do it, because then I didn't need to worry about it. And over a period of time, I'd see what they were putting in the meals, and I'm like, fuck, I can make this. Why am I paying $15 for this meal when I could make a huge mountain of it and then freeze it? And so I started doing that a little more. When time constraints would come in or whatever, I'd order a couple of weeks of vegan meal delivery. But it's always better when you make it yourself. And so it honestly just got easier and easier and easier. And I didn't notice all these things people say, like, oh, my energy went through the roof and I slept awesome. I have sleep apnea. Like, I'm not a candidate for it. I think it's genetic. My dad snored like a freaking roaring bear when I was a kid, and both my brothers' wives say my brothers snore like monsters. And so I have a mouthpiece that I wear, like a mandibular advancement splint. So that helps a lot, but I didn't notice the sleep and energy. What I did notice was I didn't get a single injury. I haven't had a single chronic injury since the day I went vegan. And I used to get, my elbows used to blow out, my shoulders, even when I'm like making mistakes in the gym where I'm doing things that I shouldn't be, like trying to squat heavy, but it blows my lower back out and blows my hips out and things like that. It goes away far quicker than injuries I used to have when I was in the military eating 80% meat. So that was the biggest thing for me, which means that I can consistently train more. And that's important to me because I love going to the gym. Now I'm programmed. Get up in the morning, make my bed, have my pre-workout, work out. It's like, I don't even think about it anymore. And that's the mindset a lot of people need to get into. Don't think of it as a chore and think of it as something you have to do. Just program it so you don't even think about it. Oh, I get up, I have a smoothie, I work out. That's it. And so for my mental health, it's very important that I can go and work out. And that's what veganism has allowed me to do.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a great story. I've been doing it for so long, it's hard for me to compare what life was like before. Because I wasn't into hardcore training then. I mean, I became a vegetarian when I was 15 after a trip to Kenya with my parents. And I was really into the Cro-Mags. You mentioned John Joseph.
Love that guy.
Yeah, Cro-Mags was my favorite band growing up. I was really into the New York City hardcore scene and thrash metal and death metal and all that jazz. So I saw them live probably 4 or 5 times in Washington, D.C. And there's two prominent figures in Cro-Mags. We have John Joseph and then we have Harley Flanagan. So there's 2 separate Cro-Mags bands. I'm actually really good friends with Harley Flanagan, so I've known him for a long time. And I know the whole story between John and Harley, so I won't touch on that. I've got my own views on that, but I'll keep them to myself. But anyway, I'm cool with John. I don't consider John a close friend or anything, but he and I are fine. But Harley's actually a good friend of mine. So anyway, I bring up Harley because on the way to Kenya, I read an interview with him where he talked about why he was on a vegetarian diet. And it was because you can't talk about peace when you're eating a steak because that animal died in agonizing pain. And that kind of with me. So he got into the reasons why that he was getting into it, that he had a lot of violent thoughts and he was dealing with a lot of violence in his life, and this helped calm him down. I go, okay, well, I can relate to that to some extent. And then people go, well, what about Kenya made you not want to eat meats? I mean, you're seeing animals in their natural habitat. This is just what they do. Lions kill, they live, and so forth. I go, it's not that I saw a bunch of animals killing each other and that made me think I don't want to eat meat anymore. I saw a bunch of animals living in their natural environments and how different that is than seeing them in a zoo, or you start thinking about zoos and laboratory animals and so forth. And then you don't contribute to that. You start thinking about factory farming and how the quality of life that those animals experience versus what we're seeing here. So those
it's not about being perfect. A lot of people, they'll jump on your ass and they're like, oh, what about, this medication wouldn't exist if it wasn't for animal testing. And I'm like, look, it's not about perfection. It's about progression. And if we can cause as little harm as possible, then that's a big deal.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. So vegan wasn't even something I heard of until I was 20. I was in Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon, 1994. And Portland, Oregon's always been ahead of the curve on a lot of things. I mean, they had Starbucks and all kinds of coffee shops out there way before they spread all over the U.S. and then eventually all over the world. That whole culture of going to a coffee shop and people congregating there. I didn't grow up with that back east. They didn't have anything like that. Coffee was something you got at a restaurant or a diner. There wasn't a specific, and it was either black or cream and sugar, right, or some variation of those three ingredients. But when I saw all these people congregating at these coffee shops, I go, wow, this is a great idea. This is going to blow up. This is going to be something that goes across the whole country. But they also had a lot of vegan food, and I'd never even heard of that term before because I was thinking I'm still eating eggs, I'm still eating dairy, and I'm thinking I'm not harming any animals doing that. But once you realize that in some ways you're harming animals even more doing that, and if you got into it to not harm animals, then you have to start questioning your actions, going, if I'm going to eat eggs and dairy, I might as well just eat meat too. So it's either I eggs and dairy, or I just eat whatever I want meat-wise, because there's no point thinking that I'm actually doing any good if I'm over-consuming milk and eggs that came from factory farming.
Well, as a really educated person in the field of hormone optimization, vitamin deficiencies, you've been doing it for a really long time. Where do you stand on all of these people that change back saying, oh, my hair was falling out? You know, just most recently, Miley Cyrus was on Joe Rogan saying she's back eating fish again because she had brain fog.
I have two takes on that. Number one is no diet works for everybody, right? So not everyone's going to get on a vegan diet and feel great. Some people are just going to feel better with some animal products in their diet, whether it's fish, eggs, whatever it is. That's just a reality that people have to accept. Not everyone's going to thrive on the same diet. That's number one. Number two, though, I think a lot of times when anyone's dealing with something, if you have brain fog and you're eating meat, you're not going to think, okay, I need to cut out meat. You're going to another reason. But for whatever reason, anytime someone feels anything negative and they're also vegan, it's always the diet. Like, oh, Mac Danzig lost a fight. Yeah, that's because he's on a vegan diet. Yeah. Okay, when he won a fight. Oh, it's in spite of a vegan diet then.
Yeah.
Or I have brain fog. Oh, well, what could it be? It could be so many things. You could be burned out with the travel schedule. You have brain fog. You could be on some medication that has that as a side effect. You could be maybe doing too many recreational drugs, and that's causing that. But for whatever reason, whenever someone has anything and someone finds out that you're a vegan, that's always the top of the list of what must be causing the issue.
Always, because nothing else exists.
Yeah, sometimes it is, because I mean, I'm a strong believer in having a good amount of fat in my diet. So I don't do this low fat bullshit. You know, I don't do 10%.
I eat so much fat.
Yeah, I eat I eat olive oil. I cook in it. I eat a lot of nuts and seeds. I do better with more fat in my diet, and that's something I've known since I was in my 20s. That if my fat intake goes too low, my performance in the gym goes down the drain.
Yeah. Well, what's the brain made of?
So it's important for brain health, and it's important for the whole sex hormone chain, just fueling that. You need cholesterol, and then you need cholesterol conversion into pregnenolone and all the way down. So pregnenolone, DHEA, testosterone, DHT, estrogen, progesterone, all of those things rely on having a certain amount of cholesterol. Now, you don't have to have cholesterol in your diet, but some saturated fats or monounsaturated fats, so olive oil and coconut oil, both of those have been proven to convert cholesterol into testosterone. So those are good fats.
I didn't know that. I was watching, one of my good friends is Simon Hill that does Plant Proof. And he came out recently talking about the myth of coconut oil and had some studies and stuff. I didn't get all the way through it, but I think one of the biggest problems is, you know, it's like COVID at the moment. There's people that say one thing, and then there's other people that say another thing. And when you respect them both, it's very hard to work out what the truth is.
Yeah. Well, I think you can do too much coconut oil. So when I say I take coconut oil, it's probably 1 tablespoon a day with my stir-fried dinner. I don't put it in protein shakes and then down it all throughout the day. Yeah. And that's what we're doing. And I think oil should be consumed in the context of a meal too, not just put in your coffee or just taking a tablespoon in between meals to get some calories in.
So you don't think people should be just fucking chewing on a stick of butter and putting it in their coffee like Bulletproof?
Yeah. Somehow it just doesn't sound like a good idea to me.
It really doesn't, does it?
Putting a whole stick of butter, you're putting basically a day's worth of fat into your coffee in the morning. And then you're going, yeah, I don't have to eat. Well, of course you don't have to eat, motherfucker. You just had a whole stick of butter.
Right, so what do you think about this carnivore? I don't want to call it a fad because it's actually quite a movement now. And one of my friends, Chris Bell, he said he's finishing up a documentary on it. You know, all these people are coming out with all these new studies saying that it's beneficial. I think they just kind of like phase over the bit that says that, you know, what about the destruction of the land for the animals raised, the destruction of the land for the crops that's got to feed them. It's kind of like, it feels like it's a very selfish movement. It's all about me 100%. And fuck everything else.
Yeah, 100% it is. And unless we get the technology to clone meat and do it in a way that doesn't impact the environment negatively, right now it is a really selfish diet. You're basically saying, I don't care about the planet, I don't care about animals, it's about me. Now, the main proponent of the carnivore diet is Dr. Sean Baker. And I'm not even sure if he's a doctor anymore. I thought his license was revoked, but that's a separate story. And he was what kind of doctor was he? I want to say he was a osteopath. But anyway, he's the big...
An osteopath?
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't that like a kind of a mix between a chiropractor and a physio?
Yeah, well, basically, it's someone that prescribes cortisone when you have any pain in the body.
Okay. I've seen him pop up occasionally, but I don't like to live in an echo chamber, and so I follow Chris Bell and those guys, and I see what they have to say. But Sean Baker kept popping up, and it just like he's an older guy, and he looks pretty jacked and strong and fit and stuff, but it felt like a vegan hate page, and it felt very childish coming from this man that's supposed to be a doctor, and so I couldn't even bear it.
I can't get into it either, but I bring him up because he posted his blood work after being on this carnivore diet for a while. And he had the lowest testosterone I've ever seen in a blood test. Total testosterone was in the 200s, which is abysmally low. My father in his 70s has a total testosterone of 550, and he's not a workout guy. He doesn't even care about health. All right, so that's to give you some context.
How is he so big and muscular then?
Well, I'll get to that in a second. I mean, his fasting blood glucose was 126. That's diabetic. You're at 126.
Oh, wow.
Diabetic. You're not eating a gram of fucking carbohydrates, yet you're diabetic. So how is that?
That if he ever goes back to trying to eat carbs, he's just going to spike and go full diabetic.
Because that's what happened. All the animal protein and all the fats just make the insulin receptors weaker, so now you can't absorb carbohydrates as well as you used to be able to do. But let's just say theoretically he stays on this diet forever.
Well, it behooves him to promote eating meat then, doesn't it?
But his way of framing this was, I don't need that much testosterone to perform at a high level. I was like, oh, please. If I posted blood work like that, he would be like, oh, see, vegan diet is unhealthy. Vegan posted blood work like that, they would get crucified by people that eat meat. They would be going, see, this is what we're talking about. Diabetic, low testosterone. In fact, his blood work was emblematic of all the things that people have stereotypes over that a vegan would have, low testosterone and glucose issues. So, I mean, his blood work was horrible. There's any diet that results in blood work like that is not a diet worth following. So something's wrong with the diet. Okay. Now, other people that do it and they feel great, sure. But how long are they going to last? Talk to me if you've done it for 20 years.
It seems like more of an isolation diet, and that's why they're getting results.
Yeah, my friend Steve Maxwell, he's also a kettlebell instructor, and he's one of the first black belts in jiu-jitsu. Okay, he used to eat that carnivore diet way before it became popular. So when I first met him, all he ate was steak, and then maybe he had a little bit of broccoli on the side, but like 90% of what he ate was just meat. He didn't eat any carbohydrates. He did that for many years. He said he felt great. But eventually he stopped doing it, let's say maybe 8 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, because he said he started developing joint pain and he found that his endurance on the mat was becoming compromised. So now he eats a much more balanced approach, which he prefers.
So people think veganism is extreme. Who the fuck would want to eat meat for every single meal? That would be ridiculously boring. I wouldn't want to give up smoothie bowls.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to give up almond butter and peanut butter.
I mean, just a bowl of fruit on a hot day is a nice feeling. I mean, you want to have some variety in your diet, not just one thing.
It just sounds like I don't know a lot about it. I try and listen and learn, and they bring out studies and stuff, but it just doesn't feel right.
Well, it's extremes in terms of, let's look at macronutrients, because on a vegan diet, you get protein, fat, carbohydrates, and you get as much as you want depending on how you do it. So you can balance the macronutrients to your heart's delight. And then you're getting a ton of micronutrients. So you're getting a lot of vitamins, minerals, polyphenols, other healthy things. Now, on a carnivore diet, you're getting no carbohydrates whatsoever. And the only fat you're getting is either from the meat or supplemental fat, maybe some oil, some butter. I don't know exactly how the different variations of how people do this diet. So what happens is that you're eating a lot of protein, but a good chunk of that protein has to convert into carbohydrates because you need carbohydrates. People always say carbohydrates aren't essential. Okay, they're not essential because protein can be converted into carbohydrates, but you don't want to waste protein. I don't want my protein being converted into carbohydrates. I want my protein going to brain health and muscle development and workout recovery, building up my body.
So if you're eating nothing but meat, that wouldn't matter, would it? Because you're getting enough protein and the excess can be converted to carbohydrates. So you're getting enough of those.
But now you have to eat in excess so that it's converted to carbohydrates.
Okay.
Right? Someone like me, I eat about 60, 80 grams of protein a day. It's nothing considered by most people's standards. I'm 201 pounds, lean. I deadlifted 600 pounds 2 weeks ago. I had yeah. So, I mean, all these notions of you got to have 1 gram of protein per pound, you got to have this, you got to have that. No, what you need is really good protein utilization. So plant-based proteins you actually absorb really well. This is something Dr. Nick Delgado said.
That's flies in the face of everything that they've said in the past, though.
Plant proteins have high nitrogen value. The meat proteins, all the studies that they bring up going, see, meat is superior to plants. That's based on rat studies. It's not based on human studies. So we're looking at rats and saying, yes, rats do better. Rats, a carnivore, do better on their natural diet, eating the flesh of other animals than they do vegetables, which they may never come across. Although that's not exactly astonishing. So you always have to look at what's going on here. Now, the nitrogen retention is really important. So if I have an abundance of carbohydrates in my diet, sweet potato, legumes, things like that, legumes also have protein, but a good amount of carbohydrates too. So, and then I'm eating fruits and vegetables. So I have a good amount of carbohydrates. All the carbohydrates are going to just fueling the muscles, fueling your brain. And now the protein can be used completely to build up your body. So I may only be eating 60 to 80 grams of protein. Sometimes it's less than that. Sometimes it's more. I don't really keep track at this point. But all of that protein is going to building up my body in recovery because I have everything else taken in place. Now, why choose a diet where you have to eat way more protein than you need so that some of it converts to carbohydrates? Why don't you just have some carbohydrates?
Keep your body functioning properly it's the way it's supposed to.
Why does it have to be that extreme? I mean, at least a paleo diet is a lot of meat, but you're eating fruits and vegetables as well. Why is that not enough? Why do we have to cut out the fruits and vegetables? And then these notions of joint pain went away after I cut out this. Okay, sure, there could be some foods that you have an inflammatory response to. You could have food sensitivity to broccoli. You could have a food sensitivity to anything. But what's happening is when you do this really extreme diet, you're cutting out so much. It's because of everything that you're cutting out that you're benefiting, not so much from what you're replacing it with.
Yeah.
You know what the culprit is that you're cutting out, but you've cut out so much to follow this extreme diet that chances are whatever the trigger was has been cut out too. Now, if you can determine what the trigger is and just cut that out, that's going to make a lot more sense for people. So if someone doesn't know what the trigger is, let's say it's broccoli, but you don't know that. So you cut out all fruits and vegetables and you just eat meat, when all you needed to do was just cut out broccoli. And you could have had a balanced approach.
Yeah, that's what I thought about a lot of these instances that I've read online and stuff. It doesn't feel like they're really delving into what's causing it. Or getting professional people to guide them through it. It's just they just go on instinct. Oh, here's a new fad. But I don't know. Like you can't force anyone to do anything they don't want to do. It's like we were talking about earlier. I just like leading by example.
That's the best. I don't get into debates with people. I go, look. I always tell people this is what works for me.
Yeah.
On the shadow of a doubt, I've proven that what I do works for me. You don't keep getting stronger at my age if your diet is compromised. If I'm deficient in anything, believe me, it would have manifested by now, and I would have felt some consequences.
Yeah, and one of the important things for me is that it makes me feel good in my soul. That
100%.
Nothing is, I'm not directly purchasing the death of animals. It just makes you feel good. I feel more at ease and at peace with myself and more comfortable in doing my job and promoting the health and the conservation and preservation of sharks and fish and oceans and and it's a big thing, man, to feel like you're doing the right thing. You do the right thing for one good deed and you feel good for the rest of the day.
So true.
That's how you get to feel like that all the freaking time.
Yes, I agree 100%. That's how I feel about the diet too. And then I'm fortunate in my line of work, it's one gratification after another because I'm getting a lot of positive feedback at all times. So I know I'm having a positive impact in the lives of others. And that's important to me. It's important to me to have purpose. Like I'm improving the world in some way. I don't want to just be in a bubble where I'm okay, but everyone else isn't. But I'm okay. Everyone else is just going to have to fend for themselves. They're just going to have to figure it out. Now, that's not the mindset that I think is healthy for a society. Not in the slightest. Yeah.
We're all in this together, and it's a hard time to get people to understand that, because everyone's so divided in their tribes of, you know, political beliefs and then religious beliefs, and now we've got dietary beliefs that's dividing people like crazy. It's just, we really need to come together on a much more base level.
Ridiculous. Yeah, it's really ridiculous. In fact, some people are, I mean, some people are so extreme with their diets, they're going, you know, I can't be friends with people that eat meat anymore. And I go, look, you choose whatever you want to do, but my father eats meat, so I'm not supposed to, I can't talk to him anymore because he eats meat. And he was open-minded about me being vegetarian as a teenager. He didn't say, oh, that's stupid, that's not going to work. He's like, yeah, sure, give it a shot. Your mom does it. Let's see how it goes. So he was very respectful and open-minded. He could have easily squashed it and said, oh, come on, you know, you're gonna become weak. I was already weak, so becoming weaker wouldn't have been something I was worried about. It wasn't the epitome of health back then. And then also, I think it's important that people are exposed to you. So if I'm friends with a bunch of people that have no desire to be on a vegan diet, but they like what they're seeing with me, that's going to make things start percolating. I've had many friends that pick up a plant-based diet after years of seeing my example and others. Just several things fall in place, not just my example, but that was one of the things, because they're going, okay, Mike's been doing this for a long time, and then I've got all these other reasons why I want to do it.
There's no reason not to try it anymore.
Yeah, why not? Just give it a shot. Give it a shot for 30 days if you want, or do a gradual approach. Maybe just, you know, you could do something where you go, I'm just going to cut out meat. I'm going to eat some fish, some eggs, and maybe a little bit of dairy, and then I'm just going to ramp up plant foods. You start there.
Do what I did and get the vegan meal delivery for a month.
Oh yeah,
it makes it so simple. The food is really good. It's like $10 a meal. It makes it so easy.
Everywhere you go now, there's options. When I first started, there were no options. You went to a restaurant, you had to have them make a meal for you. You had to describe, go, okay, let me just combine these 3 side dishes.
Yeah, I still have to do that sometimes.
Yeah, I do too, depending on where I go. But nothing. There were no vegan restaurants. Nobody knew what the hell you were talking about when you said vegan or you don't eat meat. If you would say I don't eat meat, they would think, okay, well, we have fish too. It was like, no, I don't eat
that. Yeah, that's what my mum did. I went back home about 2 years ago. And she lives down on the South Coast with her husband, Bruce. And she's like, oh, I didn't know what to make you, so I'm going to make salmon for dinner. I'm like, Mom, salmon is meat. And she's like, well, I don't know what to make. Bruce needs meat for his meal. I'm like, no, he really doesn't. And I'm like, well, let me cook for you. And so I cooked up this huge spaghetti bolognese with fake meat and stuff. He ate 2 bowls of it.
Yeah.
Basically, I almost effectively cured my mum's rheumatoid arthritis by putting her on colonic. It's disgusting. I paid for 3 colonics.
That's
told her no more alcohol, no more caffeine, no more dairy, no more meat. Just try it for a couple of weeks. Right. She called me after 3 days and she said, Paul, it's amazing. She's like, I'm getting up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet. I'm not dizzy anymore. I'm walking with the girls. I'm not using the cane.
Awesome.
3 days.
Yeah, it's amazing.
3 weeks. Then 3 weeks later, she's back to her old ways.
It's hard. It's hard for people to make change, even when the benefits are there. And part of it is just societal pressure. Everyone around you is eating a certain way. Now you're the one person who doesn't eat like that. And I can understand that, because when I was in college, I didn't know anyone else that was vegetarian or vegan. It was me. So it was me and my eating friend, and I have to always figure out how to navigate through that. So some people, they just don't like that. They're going, I don't want to have to just not enjoy what other people are enjoying. They just start talking themselves out of it, or they feel that maybe they're getting made fun of a bit. And for men, peer pressure never ends, meaning that as you get older, there's still peer pressure. Now there's peer pressure of, okay, all my friends own a house, so I need to own one. Like, oh, all my friends have good-looking wives, I need to have one. Like, oh, all my friends.
If everyone did the same thing, it would be a boring fucking world.
And a lot of people do the same thing, and that's why a lot of people are boring. You know? We need more people doing unconventional things, coming up with new ways. Because when I talk to young people now, I talked to a guy in my neighborhood. He's only 21, and he's that millennial mindset, but he has this 9 to 5 mentality of, I'm going to get this job, I'm going to do this. And I go, look, man, the world is a much different place now than when I grew up. I go, when I was growing up, that was our mentality too. We just get a regular job and do it. I go, but now it doesn't have to be like that. You could be a teenager making 6 figures designing websites or selling stuff on eBay. Opportunities like that exist, and there are teenagers who do it. It's not something that's even theoretical. There's people that are 18, 19 making these great incomes because they figured out business avenues, leveraging technology. So now you can create the life you want. It doesn't have to be this 9 to 5, ask permission for vacations, and then you get 2 days out of 7 where you can actually do what you want. Now you can have this amazing lifestyle where you make good money, you have a lot of free time, and you enjoy.
People are living in Bali and Ecuador, and just because you can work remotely and do these websites and do whatever, and especially now with COVID, where half the people don't even need to go, and they don't even have offices anymore. Right. So you can go and live in a tropical paradise for a third of the cost of what you're paying in your hometown, and live a dream and do a job that you love. So why wouldn't you want to do that?
What am I doing here? I could be living in a mansion with 20 servants in India, in Las Vegas. Because my business, I can definitely do from anywhere in the world. It's a supplement business, and I have a fulfillment company, so that's all taken care of. It's not me packaging orders and going to the post office. So that thing.
Where are you now?
I'm in Las Vegas.
Okay, I was just up there a couple of weeks ago. I thought about moving up there because my friend got a beautiful home. 1.6. Paulie Shaw actually moved in next door to him. Wow. And it's not as nice a house as his, but it's a huge yard, big pool, nice house. And he rents that house, and he pays the same amount as me for a studio apartment in LA.
Oh yeah, LA's extortionate. I lived at Archstone Marina. I think it's called something else now, but it's that apartment complex right off of Lincoln. And I think it's been sold.
I know the one.
Yeah. But anyway, the rent at that time was, I think, $2,200 a month, but that was 2005. Now it's probably this is a 2-bedroom apartment. Now it's probably 4,000, 5,000.
I don't want to say numbers, but it's way worse than that.
Well, because I lived in an apartment in Santa Monica for 2 years too, and that was $1,600 a month around 2003, 4. That same apartment is $3,500 the last time I checked. It may even be more than that. So
it's pretty crazy.
That's why we moved out of Los Angeles, because I started making good money, but you weren't able to really improve your lifestyle that much because it's so expensive out there. How much money do you want to allocate towards your lifestyle? So we moved to Las Vegas in 2006, and you could rent a house 2,500 square feet for $1,400 at that time.
That's amazing. But what do you do out there? I get mixed messages. Some people say they love it. Some people are like, yeah, it's nice to visit, but it sucks to live there.
Depends on what you like to do. When we first moved here, I didn't like it either, especially living in LA. I go, this is boring as fuck, especially here in the suburbs. It's all strip malls and looked like someone just pulled up with the town on a trailer and dropped it off and then just kept moving. Everything was, there weren't any unique restaurants. It was Applebee's and all these boring ass restaurants. It just didn't have any local culture. But that was 2006. Things have changed a lot quite then. Las Vegas started becoming fun when you started realizing the opportunities here. And what I mean by that is I like to go to a lot of concerts, and Las Vegas has the best concert experiences in the world by far. Nowhere has better concert experience.
It's open. Isn't Vegas open now?
No, I mean, it's open, but nothing's happening. There's no
like concerts.
I mean, I had a front row ticket for Sarah Brightman for October. It's one of my favorites.
No idea who that is.
Well, I mean, my music taste is really broad. I mean, I listen to Clomid, death metal, and I listen to Sarah Brightman, who's a classical singer. But anyway,
my girlfriend used to laugh at me because my gym mixtape is 50 Cent and Ed Sheeran.
I like Ed Sheeran too, man. He's great. So I like a big variety of music. I like Celine Dion. I like fucking Adele, and then I like Cro-Mags and some Death Angel and all kind of Die Hard is Murder. So I like a wide variety of music. But so I bought that front row ticket and I couldn't wait to go, but it was canceled. It was canceled maybe last week. I was like,
bugger.
I had a feeling that it would be too. So hopefully next year we start getting back to normal. So that's one thing. And then outdoors wise, we have Red Rock, we have Mount Charleston, and we have Lake Mead. And all three of those are really nice. Mount Charleston's a little bit further out. It's an hour, but you feel like you're in a national forest when you're out there. It's super beautiful.
Oh, wow.
Red Rock is more of a desert landscape, but it's only about 20 minutes away from where I'm at in Henderson. And that is amazing, especially when the weather cools down a little bit. I'll be there at least once a week. So things like that are fun. And then what's cool about Vegas is our airport has direct flights to anywhere in the world. You can fly to the UK direct. You can fly to China now direct.
Wow.
You can fly anywhere direct. And it has flying internationally, honestly, is easier than flying domestic because not a lot of people do it. Usually I'm the only American on the plane going overseas, and the only plane coming back.
There's direct flights with the private airlines from Vegas to LA. If you book it 3 or 4 days in advance, it was like $107.
Yeah, there you go.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. And in Los Angeles, 40 minutes away. Whenever I go to Los Angeles, I fly there. I usually don't drive, and it's a 40-minute flight. So, look, I could go to LA every weekend if I wanted to, if I miss it that much. But once you get settled here and you realize all the fun things you can do here, you have, at least I had a paradigm shift. And I also play blackjack, so I like to go out and I like to gamble from time to time. And that's what's cool about Vegas is I can have more fun on a Monday night than pretty much anyone else in the country. Because Monday night, pre-pandemic, now it's a little different. But pre-pandemic, Monday night in Vegas, you go to the Strip, and there's a lot of people there. People are having a good time.
Really?
So it's a 24/7 town. Things are always open, and I like the fact. Here's the real distinguishing point. Las Vegas gives you the opportunity to have small town living that's very affordable with big city action 15, 20 minutes away, depending on what side of town you live in.
Uh-huh.
Big city action. So the Las Vegas Strip garners huge city action. That's why we have all the best concerts coming through here, sporting events, UFCs, you name it. And then over here in Henderson, it's small town living. It's quiet, it's safe. So I actually love Las Vegas. If you run a business, there's no state taxes. That's a big plus. In California, if you run a business, there's 20 different forms you have to fill out every year. So, and then you get taxed heavily out there.
You do have to, you have to, it's like Texas though. You have to drive everywhere, don't you?
Yeah, you do, but it's a small town. It takes 10 minutes to get anywhere. You're not, when I'm in the car to go somewhere, I'm not stuck in traffic for 3 hours like in Los Angeles. You're on the 405. Yeah. You're just trying to get from Santa Monica to Inglewood, and it takes 2 hours because you're stuck on the 405, or you're trying to go to Inglewood. And
such a wake-up call when I moved out from Australia.
Here. Yeah, you don't deal with traffic jams. Maybe sometimes on the Strip pre-pandemic, but anyone that's a local, you take the roads that run parallel to the Strip. You're not going up and down Las Vegas Boulevard. You go down Dean Martin instead, or you go down Paradise instead, and then you cut over to wherever you want to go. So traffic is, I can't even remember the last time I was stuck in traffic for a long period of time.
I might go visit my friend a few more times before I make a solid decision. Everyone seems to be bailing out of LA. Everyone's either going to Vegas or Austin. And I just feel like to live in America is a gift for me. And it would be a shame to just spend all of my time, however long I get to stay for, just living in one spot. So I think it'd be worth getting out and see. America's so vast. It's so interesting. There's different cultures, there's different accents, there's different, it's just, it's very unlike Australia where you can go into another city. We only have a small handful of major cities. America is just like all the southern towns and the East Coast, the West Coast, and it's just ridiculously incredible scenery and landscape and people. And, especially being Australian, you get welcomed in a lot. So I definitely have to, and then you're the half robot Australian walking down the street that's been attacked by a shark. I get a lot of free beer.
Yeah, the accent, and then what you have going on, it makes it easy for women to come talk to you because they have a starting point, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe
you have to hear your story. You got to tell that story every time you meet someone. But
it does become a drag. I got to be honest. But I think the big thing is having the limbs, having the prosthetics, being fit and confident, and just smiling at people, like being open and friendly. That goes a long way, because there's so many people just with the blinkers on, just like this, and in their head they're stressing and they're worrying about things, or they're self-conscious, and so they're not quite scowling at each other, but they're not connecting. You walk around, like I noticed this at Gold's Gym in Venice, because I've trained there. I love that place. I've got such a great family community there, and everyone was so friendly. And it was very different in gyms in Australia, where everyone's just kind of trying to look cool, it feels like, and everyone's scowling. And I took a bit of that home to Australia to my gym, which is well known for being a very pretentious gym. And I walked around, I just started smiling at people. And it's amazing how quickly those barriers come down, especially with the bigger, scarier looking individuals. And so that opens a lot of doors here in America, just walking down the street, saying hello. I say g'day, which opens even more doors. But it's not like, I'm not putting it on. That's honestly what we just, g'day mate, how you going?
Yeah. No, you're right. You're 100% right. There's never a negative of being, there's never a positive of just having a terrible personality and being a jerk and being rude to people. There's nothing positive that's going to come out of that. But there's plenty positive that will come out of just being a cool guy, be a cool person, be a friendly person, be a compassionate person. And people are going to gravitate towards that, especially when they're not expecting that from you. Because looking at someone like me, they're thinking that guy looks like a killer. He looks but I'm a cool guy and I'm a very friendly person. So then when people meet me, that comes through.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's a good message in that. I think we need a lot more of that with the current climate of what's going on. People are in fear, people are divided, people are angry, people are hurt, people are sick. Yeah, we definitely need a bit more of that positive mindset. People walk around being friendly through their masks, obviously. We have the power to change this world for the better. It's not in the politicians' hands. It's in no one else's hands except for all of us.
Yeah, we as a society have to take charge of this and come together to move the ball forward. And we're not going to get the most useful information, which is how to protect ourselves from the virus, because there's nutraceutical approaches that are very effective. There's one that's called quercetin. It's a zinc ionophore. It pushes zinc into your cells to protect it from virus replication and virus attachment. So now you're protected, and it's been proven to work against earlier iterations of COVID-19, SARS, and so SARS in particular. There's a scientist in Canada who studied it extensively. Now there's 67,000 articles on the benefits of vitamin D just on COVID-19, not 67,000 articles on vitamin D and the immune system. And more research is coming out how if you have high vitamin D levels in the optimal range, over 60, so 60 to 100, you're way less likely to have serious symptoms if you get exposed to COVID, and way less likely to die than people that are vitamin D deficient. People that were vitamin D deficient, they had a much higher level, much higher death rate, and a much higher serious infection rate or serious symptom rate. So this kind of information should be promulgated far and wide, but it isn't. Everyone's waiting around for a vaccine and wearing your masks and doing social distancing, and that's all fine and good. But there's a lot more that we can do. Make yourself as healthy as possible. Make your respiratory system in particular as healthy as possible.
Absolutely.
I had a horrible flu last year, so I made respiratory health a priority. And I have an elliptical machine at the house. I do interval training on it several times a week. Sometimes I do that before lifting weights. So my cardiovascular health has never been better than it is right now. My lung capacity, all of that is on point. So if I get hit by something like COVID and I manifest moderate to serious symptoms, at least my lung capacity is at a high level, so that even if it's compromised, it's probably not going to be life-threatening. Where if a compromised respiratory system and compromised lung function, and then you get hit by COVID, that can definitely be life-threatening.
This is a huge rabbit hole we could go down. Maybe we can do it another time. But for now, I need to smash my face with some food.
Yeah, I think I do too. This has been awesome, man. I appreciate it. This is a really good amount of time. Where can people find out more information about you?
I'm on Instagram. I got a website. It's all just under my name, Paul de Gelder. Shark Week, obviously. Everyone watch Shark Week. It's just finished, unfortunately. But we got the Discovery Go app, so you can get on there and watch old shows. Awesome. Really good year this year. I got to work with Mike Tyson, and I don't think anyone has ever seen Mike Tyson throw up before. So if anything, just tune in for that. Working with Will Smith, that was a great show as well, helping him overcome his fears. So like I said before, I love my job. I get to do incredible stuff. So I hope everyone out there that's listening, if you're stuck in a rut, that you can take some of the stuff that we've learned through our lives, you and me, Mike, and adapt some of that to improve your mental, physical, spiritual health.
I love it. Great way to end. I appreciate it. This was an awesome amount of time and great information. Let me hit stop recording.